Hello, hello. So glad to be here, everyone, for this week's Monday Live Talk. It's kind of funny as I say that, I realize I've been doing this for like 4 years. I've been going live every Monday for almost four, I guess it's like 3.5 years, almost 4 years. Wild, but it is so great to be here and connect with everyone each Monday. So, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Kimsey Berkwin. I am an integrative nutritionist in my online practice, Progressive Health and Wellness, where I help people, I help ambitious, successful men and women who are struggling in their mental health or with their mental performance by taking a root caused body mind approach to optimize physical and mental health. So, today I'm going to be talking about something that is so ubiquitous, it seems like. I know I have struggled with this, and this is probably one of the top 3 symptoms that we see, which is brain fog. So, before I get into things, though, it looks like we've got some people hopping on. Hi, thanks for being here. If you are with me today, if you're with me live, drop a comment, drop a wave, and let me know that you're here. And then let me know also what drew you to this talk. What, do you identify with brain fog? How do you experience that? And also where in the world you're watching from. We have people from, all the way from like Houston, Texas to the Philippines and everything in between. So I would love to connect with everyone. And that includes if you're watching the replay. So let me notify some people real quick that wanted to be notified. Okay. Okay. Got it. All set. So, brain fog. Let's talk about brain fog. I have asked this question. I ask this question all the time in appointments. And some people, when I ask, do you struggle with brain fog? Some people are like, I don't know what that is. I hear that term. Can you describe it to me? And my response to that is if you don't know what it is, then you don't have it because brain fog is so obvious when you're struggling with it. I remember at my worst, like I would space out in the middle of an email, space out in conversations, forget what I was talking about. So what brain fog is a feeling like it's slowed mental processing. It's a feeling like your head is in a cloud. You can't think clearly. It's difficult to multitask or do more than one thing at a time. Learning new information is challenging. Short-term memory can be challenged. Um, and then again, this tendency to like space out in the middle of a conversation or, you're writing an email and space out in what you were saying and where your train of thought was going. So it's just really foggy, slow, cloudy, slow thinking, and poor memory and difficulty learning or retaining new information. So brain fog, it coexists. It's not a condition in and of itself, right? It is a common symptom with other conditions. So we'll see brain fog. It's really the result of, at its core, brain fog is the result of brain inflammation and metabolic dysfunction. Because when the brain is inflamed or when it is essentially starving, which is what I'm referring to as metabolic dysfunction, because there's many different reasons why that can happen, especially when we talk about blood sugar, though. Because when that happens, few things happen. One, neurotransmitter release is compromised. So now we have neurochemical imbalances. There's also this phenomenon that happens called dendritic pruning, where basically it interferes, inflammation and metabolic dysfunction interfere with the connectivity between neurons. And it's the neuronal connections is how we process thought. So, and then lastly, inflammation creates what's called a spreading depression in especially the frontal lobe, which is our region of thinking, planning, and logic. And this spreading depression means those neurons are not communicating, connecting as efficiently as they normally should be. So when we talk about, if we understand that brain fog is really the result of brain inflammation or metabolic dysfunction, the next logical question is what's causing the brain inflammation and the metabolic dysfunction. So there's many things, and I'm going to put that up here up front. I will see brain fog in relation to autoimmune conditions, to histamine intolerance, to chronic infections like long COVID. This is a really prevalent symptom for people with long COVID, but we'll also see it with like parasites or reactivated Epstein-Barr, other infections. Hormonal imbalances, estrogen dominance, hypothyroidism, insulin resistance. So there's a number of causes or contributors, we'll say, to brain fog. But the three that I see most commonly in my practice, one is unknown. So when talking about nutrition, unknown food sensitivities and blood sugar swings. Number two, the second category, if you will, is gut inflammation. That gut inflammation can be caused by gut dysbiosis, imbalances within the microbiome, by SIBO or EMO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, intestinal methanogen overgrowth, intestinal permeability, poor digestion and absorption, so gut inflammation. And then the third is toxin exposure, particularly mold. Mold, one of the most prevalent symptoms that people experience with mold is brain fog. And I mean, mold, the most direct route of exposure to mycotoxins is through the, inhalation from a water damaged building, and the olfactory bulb connects directly to the brain. And so these mycotoxins directly inflame the brain and also affect metabolism in the brain. So let's dive into these a little bit more in depth, but I really want to focus more on what you can start to do for it. So nutrition, food sensitivities create inflammation, right? That's the definition essentially of a food sensitivity. When we eat a food, the immune system tries to destroy that food with chemicals. Those chemicals, which are called cytokines, can cross the blood-brain barrier, and food antigens can cross the blood-brain barrier, triggering what's called the brain's microglia cells. The microglia cells are the brain's immune cells, and they're very trigger happy. I've talked about these in other Facebook Lives before. But the microglia generate inflammation in the brain, and they use pro-inflammatory chemicals to try to destroy anything that they perceive as a perceived antigen or threat. In this case, would be a food that the immune system has lost tolerance for. So again, that triggers that inflammation in the brain that leads down to the cascade that I was talking about a minute ago of the dendritic pruning, the spreading depression. And food sensitivities are a major source of this. So some of the ones that I see most commonly, gluten is huge. Gluten is one of the worst foods for mental wellness and performance. We know gluten is tied to anxiety, to depression, to bipolar, to schizophrenia, to like ADD, ADHD, brain fog, just poor mental processing, poor focus and concentration, and lower or altered mood. So gluten is huge, but dairy also, and then corn and soy are some of the most common ones that I see. We test food sensitivities pretty often using the mediator response test, MRT, or LEAP mediator response test. And that can be really helpful at uncovering unknown or like stealthy food sensitivities too. So food sensitivities are huge. And then blood sugar swings. So glucose is the body's easiest source of fuel. And the brain gets 20% of our fuel supply, just skimmed right off the top. What we eat in the form of carbohydrates and glucose is going directly to the brain. 20% of it is going to the brain. So this is pretty significant considering the brain weighs like 2% of our body weight. So low blood sugar, the first symptoms to show up are neurological in nature, right? Shaky, hangry, irritable, tired, and foggy. And then too high of blood sugar inflames the brain, right? Too high of blood sugar triggers those microglia cells. It affects the astrocytes in the brain, which are responsible for regulating glucose for the neurons. And it creates more advanced glycation end products. And this is the reason why Alzheimer's is often referred to as type 3 diabetes. So again, high blood sugar contributes to that dendritic pruning and poor neuronal stimulation. So too low is not good, too high is not good. Something called reactionary hypoglycemia, which I see very often, is blood sugar that's doing this roller coaster effect pattern throughout the day. There's episodes where it's low, there's episodes where it's high. I'm not going to get into the mechanisms of why that happens, but you may notice, do you rely on sugar or caffeine to make it through the day? Do you often crave sweets or carbs, especially craving sweets after meals? Do you crave sugar in general? Do you become shaky or ravenous or hangry if you go longer than 2, 3, 4 hours without eating? Do you become really tired if you eat a higher carb meal, like a bowl of pasta? Those can all be signs of blood sugar dysregulation. Are you not able to fast in the morning for longer than like a couple of hours, right? A lot of people say that. They're like, I have to eat in the morning. Otherwise, I become tired, foggy, dizzy, whatever it might be. And that is not necessarily normal. That's, again, a sign of glucose dependency. So nutritionally speaking, food sensitivities, blood sugar dysregulation, 2 biggest contributors. Number 2, I mentioned gut inflammation. So the brain and the gut are intimately connected through the gut-brain axis. It's mediated by neurochemistry, so the vagus nerve, as well as the neurochemicals that are made largely in the gut. Serotonin, everything that's made in the gut can be made in the brain, can be made in the gut. Serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, acetylcholine. And then also the postbiotics made by the gut microbiome. So if we have gut inflammation, that directly translates to brain inflammation. Not to mention, it also activates the sympathetic nervous system, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So it contributes to nervous system dysregulation and the release of cortisol and adrenaline when we have gut inflammation. And all of those things affect the brain inflammation, brain metabolism, but also can directly contribute to brain fog. So if you have GI symptoms, that is very commonly connected to brain fog. If you know that you have dysbiosis, or SIBO or EMO, or if you just have bloating and constipation and reflux, which, by the way, if you're having less than 2 bowel movements per day, we would consider that constipation. If you sometimes have acid reflux, if you eat spicy food or drink coffee or eat chocolate, like, not normal. It's not the food typically that's triggering that. And then, do you have more than 4 bowel movements per day? Like, that is also not normal. So those are some signs that some people often pawn off as being normal when in reality they are not. And then the third category is, sorry guys, I'm giving this talk in public. The third category is toxin exposure. So in this case, I'm talking specifically about mold. I'm not going to get into like non-heavy metal or heavy metals or non-heavy metal chemicals or things like that, because mold is what I see most often generate the symptom of brain fog. So mycotoxins are released by different types of mold. And those mycotoxins, the most direct route of exposure is through, as I mentioned a minute ago, a water damaged building. And these mycotoxins are gaseous and very noxious. And so when we inhale them, they, like I said, through the nose, it directly connects to the brain, where it then affects the immune system. It affects the brain's ability to generate energy. And as we've talked about, that then contributes to the sensation of brain fog. Not to mention a plethora of other symptoms, right? Overall fatigue, digestive issues, chronic pain, insomnia, um, you name it. So if you know that you've been exposed to mold in the past, or if you know that your house or an environment where you spend a lot of time contains mold, and you also notice this symptom, then it may be worth looking into to either fix the house, fix the mold, and work with a professional to support your body in the safe elimination of the mycotoxins. There's a whole process that involves. So if you do want more information about mold detoxification, go to my Facebook group, Holistic Solutions for Mental Health and Wellness, and search mold or mycotoxins. And there's tons of resources available for you. Okay, so what are some things that you can do? Number one, I would encourage starting, if you don't already, following an anti-inflammatory diet. Something like, we pull everybody off of gluten, dairy, soy, corn, sugar, processed foods, sometimes grains, sometimes, FODMAPs. There's a personalized approach to that, but definitely those four: gluten, dairy, soy, corn, 5, and sugar. But you can look into something like the paleo diet, or trying out Whole30, even the Mediterranean diet that's gluten-free. That can be a great starting point for following an anti-inflammatory diet. You may want to consider having food sensitivities tested. That can be really revealing. So start with an anti-inflammatory or elimination diet. And then for blood sugar dysregulation, I love intermittent fasting, working up to the 16 hours between when you finish eating and when you start eating the next day. And then ideally getting 3 to 4 hours between meals and snacks. So for example, you could eat your first meal at 10 o'clock and then eat again at 2 o'clock and then finish, or eat again at 6 o'clock, be finished by 6:30. Like, that would get you pretty close to that window. But the other benefit of intermittent fasting is it supports a process called, not only is it like a great way to restore insulin sensitivity and metabolic flexibility, but it also supports a process called autophagy and mitophagy, which is the process of breaking down old dysfunctional proteins and mitochondria, which is where energy is created, in order to build new ones. And that process has a really powerful impact on inflammation, metabolic efficiency, and performance, mental performance. So those are my recommendations for nutrition. Also, really ramp up the protein and the essential fatty acids. The brain is particularly susceptible to protein and essential fatty acids level. It's needed to manufacture all of our neurochemicals and maintain the integrity of the neurons themselves. So that's really important. 2, for GI function. Oh, this is so unique to what's happening, but I would recommend, if anything, supporting digestion. So eating your meals in a calm, relaxed state of mind. I have my clients smell the food, take 3 deep, slow breaths, smell the food until you start to salivate, and then that's your cue to eat. Chew the food until it's liquefied. Consider maybe using some bitters or apple cider vinegar with meals to support digestion, being really present with the meal. So like, those are some of the baseline recommendations. But when it comes to really figuring out where your symptoms are coming from, like, is it diet related? Is it SIBO or EMO? Is there dysbiosis? Are there parasites? Testing can be really important, because symptoms so commonly overlap. So either, if you have the symptoms of SIBO or EMO, the bloating, the reflux, the nausea, the irregular bowel patterns, running a hydrogen sulfide, the Trio Smart Breath test is a great consideration. We run the GI map stool test on everyone that we work with because we're really data driven. And then at that point, once we know the issues, then we often use different kinds of antimicrobials. But what the problem is depends on what we use. So that's why I say, having answers is most important. But at the very least, you can start with those baseline recommendations. Okay. And then number 3, we talked about, I'm not going to talk about solutions for mycotoxin exposure because that's so nuanced, but I will say exercise is my third tip. Exercise is my third tip. That even just 10-minute HIIT workouts, right? 30 seconds, your max effort, 30 seconds of rest for 10 minutes. If you can do that in the morning fasted, even better. But getting outside, getting your heart rate elevated is exercise boosts brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is how we build new neuronal connections. It boosts dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine and endorphins. It helps with insulin regulation and blood sugar sensitivity. It helps with autophagy and mitophagy. It helps with so many things, circulation, nitric oxide production, like all of these things that will help with mental performance. It's a non-negotiable. It's a non-negotiable. So if you find yourself like, I just don't have time for exercise, or I don't want to do it. Like I have my clients start with 10-minute HIIT workouts 3 days a week, right? You can find 10 minutes 3 days a week. Body-based, you don't need a gym. You don't need weights if you don't want them. You can work up to that later. But that is a really great starting point for fitting in exercise. And then ideally getting outside during the day also with some kind of movement. So maybe you do a 10-minute HIIT workout and then go for a walk at lunch or in the evening or when you first wake up in the morning, like going for a walk outside, a hike, a bike ride, anything outside is particularly important too. For circadian rhythm support, the air inside is dirtier than it is outside, for the sunlight and the negative ions, and there's reasons for it to be outside. All right, everyone. So I shared some kind of what I would consider the low-hanging fruit for brain fog. But like I said before, please know that this is often connected to many other deeper issues. And that is where working with a professional, running functional lab work, and really getting to the bottom of what is driving your symptoms, whether you also notice anxiety or difficulty with focus in general, like ADD or ADHD, insomnia, metabolic, like weight issues. If you notice other symptoms, then this could very well be connected to the brain fog, hypothyroidism. Things are coming to mind as I'm talking. And so taking that root caused bio-individual approach can be really, really powerful. All right, everyone. That covers it for today. So I have lots of free resources in my Facebook group, Holistic Solutions for Mental Health and Wellness. If you're watching me on Instagram, go to the link in my bio. There's a link to the Facebook group, but there's also links to tons of free guides like living anxiety free and solutions for acid reflux. Why isn't my brain working webinar? Like tons of free information if you want more information on integrative approaches for mental health and wellness. All right. And then if you're watching this and you're like, oh my God, I've been watching this girl go live for like months now, and I'm ready to finally take control of my health. If you are a like high achieving man or woman, if you are a parent, if you're a business owner, if you're career driven, and you generally consider yourself ambitious and motivated and positive, but lately you've been feeling like anxiety or difficulty with focus or insomnia or overwhelm has really been affecting how you show up in your relationships, your career, your life, and you want a plan to get your health and performance back, schedule a free 15-minute discovery call and let's talk about what your one-on-one plan would look like for getting started. The link is in my bio and Instagram. It's in the description in the Facebook group. It's on my bio and Facebook. You can find it wherever you look. Of course, my website, progressivehealthandwellness.com. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I am taking next Monday off, so I will not be there next Monday, but I plan to be available the following Monday. All right. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.